Okay, we're back. I'm Tina Trenner. This is Tina and Friends. And my friends are with me, Tony Barney.
Hi, Tina.
And Larry Harrison. Hi, guys. Okay, so you heard me venting about the president of Mexico. And Tony, because you're a legal eagle, I always have to do this. An attorney that's not slimy. It kills me, I'm telling you. Anyway, so what we want to do, there must be more than one out there, but we happen to find the only one I know of. You have done a little research for us on the legal end, right?
I have.
Okay, hit
I've
us with it.
I've actually done more than Eric Holder and Janet Napolitano and.
Well, I'd vote for you, honey.
And
I'd vote for him.
Possibly the president in this case. I've actually read the Arizona law, and as I've read it, I've realized that Arizona is really attempting to get the federal government to enforce the laws that are already on the books. Why do I say that? Because if you look at the Arizona law, it's referencing most of the federal code, and it's actually specifically protecting the civil rights of the individuals that fall under its jurisdictional impositions.
You mean it doesn't have the possibility of being racist? What law does not?
No, and in fact, it specifically is geared to not racial profile, which is something that many people are not correctly speaking about, because in this law, it is specifically geared to protecting the civil rights of those individuals that may come under its purview.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you're not a citizen of the United States, how far do we extend your civil rights under the Constitution if you're here illegally anyway? What kind of
That's a good question.
I know, I'm full of
I have
them.
a question. What kind of laws does Mexico extend to Americans that are down there illegally?
Well, if you go into Mexico illegally, it's a felony. Now, we talked about the INA, the Immigration and Nationality Act, last week, and essentially your first offense, more or less, if you are here illegally for the first time, is going to be considered usually a misdemeanor. Now, in Mexico, of course, the same is not true. If you go to Mexico, it is a felony. Now, if you forge documents, that is a serious crime in Mexico. And that really dovetails with some of the things that we discussed before about the fact that Mexico is fairly strict in enforcing their border, especially their southern border. And
they say they're really strict down there, like they're armed.
They are armed. And in fact, as I mentioned last week, when I was in Guatemala, I was speaking to several individuals there, and they talked about all of the tragedies that occurred on the border as the Guatemalans attempted to get into Mexico. A lot of times we think in America that everybody just wants to come to America, but if you live in Guatemala many times, you're seeking to get into Mexico, which economically may be more favorable to your situation, and that's what they try to do.
Or they could be trying to pass through Mexico to get up to the United States.
That's always a possibility.
Back to my question about the Constitution.
Yes.
How far do we extend constitutional rights to people that are here illegally? Why do they fall under our Constitution?
Well, that's the interesting part of this bill. If you look at the bill, they are essentially almost creating a scenario where individuals that are stopped are given almost the same constitutional rights as citizens, really. And that's why I find the criticism of the Arizona bill troubling, because under the Arizona bill, and this may be creating some of the angst even among the businesses, you can actually be guilty of a misdemeanor if you hire as a business an illegal alien. And so they have certain provisions that are set in place for entrapment. Entrapment meaning that somehow the government would attempt to entrap you. You should never use entrap when you're defining it, but that a plan would be laid for you as an employer to catch you, per se, hiring an illegal. But it's interesting under the law, if you were an employer and you were predisposed to hiring an illegal alien and you just happen to fall into one of these plans, assuming that they're ever created, then you would have, as an employer, the opportunity to say, well, I was entrapped or I wasn't entrapped. But if you're predisposed, that's a hard argument essentially under the law.
Well, and let me ask you this. If someone presents you with a work visa how do you know if it's legitimate or not?
Well, exactly.
They look fine.
and
I've
there-
seen them.
And there are ways to check someone's Social Security number. There are provisions already that are set forth in federal law and programs where you can actually determine and do a check on somebody's Social Security number. The problem is whether or not, again, there's going to be enforcement in these areas. And so if you have, for instance, an Arizona police officer who picks somebody up because of the fact that they're here illegally, like I said, the first time you may be looking at a misdemeanor if you're here illegally. But under Arizona law, for instance, if you're smuggling people in, and of course no one wants human trafficking, and this law really looks to prevent things like that, but you're smuggling people in illegally, you could have a situation where you are going to be faced with a much more severe penalty.
Coyotes do it all the time.
Absolutely.
I mean, they charge $1,000 a person. They put an entire truckload of people. They jeopardize their lives. They take them through the scorching hot desert. They park them in parking lots and they can't get out. I mean, it's just a terrible thing that is done to the folks that are trying to get here to work. On the other hand, if they had a work program, wouldn't that be more humane? Wouldn't it be better to say, look, everybody go back to Mexico. We're devising this work program, and you can get a work visa, and you can come back here, and you can work, and you don't have to pay $1,000 to a coyote. You don't have to walk through the Sonoran Desert. You don't have to sit inside of some box truck in the heat and almost die. I mean, don't you think that's a better idea?
Well, see, now they can get into the system. Now they're going to be paying the taxes, right?
Right.
And they're going to have a checking account. They're going to have a savings account.
Right.
And with their taxes, their children possibly going to be going to school here, maybe for this season if it's seasonal work or whatever. Maybe that's too logical.
Well, I think they're up to something else, but you know me, I always think so. I just have an idea that there's something else going on. The New World Order folks have got a plan. In fact, if you've been listening, the United Nations came out and said that they're just terrible in Arizona. This violates human rights. You know what the UN needs to do? Pack your crap and move out of this country. We'll see you later. We've got something else we can do with that real estate. We'll be right back.